Hi, welcome to HTM Insider. I'm Sherelle, your host from Multi Medical Systems. And today I'm so happy to have my friend, Chris Nowak of UHS. And Chris, why don't you introduce yourself to our viewers and our listeners?
Sure, thank you, Sherelle. I'm Chris Nowak. I'm the Senior Director for Healthcare Technology Management with Universal Health Services. We own and operate hospitals across the country, and we love providing value for our employer.
Yeah, and so what we're going to talk with Chris today is about how you, the biomed, can add value to your employer, right? So we're talking about how can you be the best employee that you can be, and you can move up the ranks there in your company. So Chris has some great ideas. So let's talk about when you first become a biomed, Chris. How do you make yourself shine? How do you stand out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's some personal responsibility associated with accomplishing that goal, right? So you got to be able to invest in yourself. So when you're first starting out in the career field, obviously you might be freshly minted, you might have any kind of skill set that you've developed post-secondary education, and now you're ready to deploy those skills for this new career that you're about to embark on. So I think some of my biggest things to coach you in doing and when you enter this career field is communicate, find somebody that's going to invest time in you, find even at the employer, let's say you land that big job, find those folks in the department that you can buddy up to. That I always
like a mentor.
Like a mentor, exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Sure. I had a mentor. I had a gentleman that took me under his wing, and that person just invested so much time in me to try and make sure that I had the best experience, because it was going to pay dividends. Maybe a little bit self-serving, right? So they know that if they invest the time in me, he took me under his wing, showed me the ropes, that it's going to make life better for he and the rest of the team. Right. It's going to make life better for the patients that we serve. So find those individuals. There are those individuals out there that want to invest their time into you to make you who you want to be. And I say who you want to be because it's important that you invest in yourself. So we were just downstairs at a conference, and we talked a little bit about this in the last presentation that I was in. And one of the things that it has to happen is when you go to your employer, obviously you're going to get some orientation, you're going to become familiar with their processes, but it really isn't incumbent upon you to invest in yourself. So that at the end of the day, you go home, you might have some dinner, take a little bit of time. Maybe it's an hour a day, maybe it's a half hour in the evening after you've decompressed, and invest a little bit. There's so much opportunity. YouTube, magazine publications, online publications.
HTM Insider.
The amount of video that makes it so much easier on you to invest in yourself. Learn from those who have made the mistakes so that you don't have to repeat them. Maybe you'll find a nugget in that as well that you didn't even think about, like something that really piques your interest that you want to get involved with. Maybe it's a piece of cardiology equipment or a piece of surgery equipment. And you can invest your time, that little bit of time in the evening, maybe on the weekend.
Yeah. And, I think another important skill that biomeds need to think about is we know that you are great at turning wrenches, so to speak, right? And IT is being, bigger and bigger in the biomed industry. But what about soft skills?
Yeah, that too was part of the meeting. That customer service skill, it's almost like
who's your customer? That's what, right? That's a relationship. Who's your customer? If you're working as a biomed in the hospital.
That's a great question. So I'm going to tell you, the ultimate customer is the patient. It's the person that's coming through the front door and paying our paycheck, right? Mm-hmm. That person is the ultimate client. Now there's so much that goes into that client though, right? There's so much that influences that client's experience while they're at your facility. So what types of things influence that client's experience, that patient experience? Medical equipment. Medical equipment. So if we're not doing our job, the nurse, the rad tech, the lab tech can't do their job. The respiratory therapist, they can't do their job. That might set them off, maybe in a little bit of a bad mood. That might transfer over to the patient experience. That's what we never want to have happen. And we influence that. We as HTM professionals really influence that, and we have control over that. What happens when the lights go out? Meaning when a piece of equipment breaks, it's that soft skills that sometimes is very difficult to teach.
It's very difficult to teach. And I like to say that, as a biomed, often you walk into a room and you could have an upset physician, let's say, that something's not working right in the OR. It's a lot of panic is going on. And somebody just unplugged the unit from the wall.
Yeah.
And you go and you plug it back in and you walk out of the room, right? But you should address those people, right? And let it be known, right? Wear that cape, right? Be proud.
You bet, Cheryl. That is such a great scenario that you just painted. So, hey, you know what? You can be Albert Einstein. You can be Mr. Fix-It. You can be that person, or Ms. Fix-It. You can be that person that is a jack of all trades. However, if the communication part of the process, you might be able to fix that equipment. You bring it back. I just gave an example where, you go up to the unit, you place it on the desk where the unit clerk may sit, and you leave. And nobody knows if that piece of equipment is ready to go. So that creates some confusion up on the floor. Communicate. It's not repaired until you fix the customer. You always have to fix the customer. The OR scenario that you painted earlier, boy, I tell you, as a young biomed, I'm in the OR with Dr. Stanley Brockman, a cardiac surgeon, and I'm underneath the drapes of the surgical table working on, because he had some EKG issues. And Stanley's up there telling me that I'm killing his patient.
Oh, no.
So the stress, but it was a jovial kind of, it was a ribbing. And I think I want to go a little bit more beyond. So yeah, it was a little bit of a ribbing Dr. Brockman was having with me, but it was that relationship that I had with Dr. Brockman. So I think back to that soft skill set, when you're a biomed or an HTM professional in your facility, or even at a company, if you're a third party, you have to establish relationships with your customers. Now, that's the other customers, right? The lab techs, the rad techs, the nurses, the doctors. Again, all of that affects the patient in the end, but you have to have those relationships. Dr. Brockman and I knew each other. I've helped him. I've worked on his stuff. He knew my competency. He knew what I could do. He trusted. He trusted me. And so that relationship helps you in those very difficult situations where things are going bad. And that relationship is so strong that they believe in what you're doing. They're going to be patient. They're going to let you do what you need to do to make that device work again.
Yeah, 100%. Now, let's talk about how do you promote in this industry? When do you go from a BMET 1 to a BMET 2? And how do you become a supervisor? And what's needed to move up the ranks in the HTM industry?
Yeah, Cheryl, that's another great question you brought up, and it varies with the different employers that are out there. So you have third-party employers, you have OEM employers, you have in-house employers like myself. And when I built my program, one of the things that I wanted to do was build a program that rewarded all kinds of skill sets. In a lot of the older traditional programs, you have biomed techs and you have imaging engineers. And what I noticed in my career, I noticed that created an us and them kind of environment. It created a little dissension among the ranks, and that team building was sometimes difficult. Where when I started my program, I wanted to reward all the skill sets, because I thought, and I still think today, that the imaging engineer brings a tremendous value to the employer, brings a tremendous skill set to the employer. But you know what? So does, you mentioned cybersecurity. In this day and age of connectivity, most of we have a tremendous amount of devices connected to the network. We have nearly 50% of our medical devices in our inventory that are connected to the network, patient monitoring systems. So cybersecurity is extremely important. Network understanding, extremely important. So I want to reward that just like I reward my imaging engineer. I want to reward the technician that can work on lab equipment just like I reward my imaging engineer.
Right.
So that is important skills. And so when I built my program, I made sure the process to go from one position to the other was clearly defined, and that skill set, the competency that you've demonstrated, is going to help you and really give you a good roadmap. Hey, what I need to do, that little bit of going home at night and taking a half hour, an hour, that's how you're going to get to the next step. In my program, I do value certification, and there is some steps in there that require certification. And I would encourage folks to go out and seek out what's involved with ACI certification. That's the Amy Credentials Institute certification. Make yourself better. Makes you just a better person. Makes you a better technician. Better value to your employer.
Right. And so with value, let's talk about with value also relates to pay.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you bet. So we talked about the imaging and the cybersecurity and clinical laboratory. Those devices are very expensive to operate, to cost of ownership. Service contracts. If I have to buy a service contract from the OEM, it's very expensive. A CT scanner can be $150,000. If I can build the skill set of somebody, or somebody can invest in themselves and develop that skill set within themselves, you're darn right. That value to the organization, your financial value. Now, instead of buying a $150,000 contract, you know what? With somebody's training, I still have to buy parts. It still costs me for that person's time. But you know what? That cost may now be $60,000 or $80,000, and now I'm saving my employer $70,000. So that value, that 70,
right.
I can take $10,000 of that and pour it into my employee.
Right. Now, when you're looking for that mentor, or you're in, your workplace, should you have a good relationship with your supervisor?
So relationships are important regardless, right? And the relationship with you're not going to love every manager that you have, or every director that you have, or even the nurses and doctors and rad techs. You're not going to always love everybody that you work with, but there's a maturity of that relationship that you both respect. You develop that mutual respect for one another, and that mutual respect really helps you work together for the good of the outcome for the patient. And just like with your manager, like I said, you may not have to love that manager or director, but you have to have a respect for that relationship, that respect for what that manager has to do, right? Because there's a lot of other things that a manager or a director is doing. There have folks from up on high squawking in their ear, and financial performance and regulatory performance and all of these different pressures that they have. Sometimes they don't always show you the love that you really need. But the relationship, as long as you develop a strong, respectful relationship, that all works itself out. And it really helps climb that ladder to where you want to go, right? And not everybody wants to be a director.
Right.
I can remember early on, as an early director in my career, I had a technician, Steve, that loved radiology. He was one of my techs that had a skill set in radiology. But Steve, when he was there from 8 to 4:30, he gave me 1,010%. But boy, he wanted to be gone at 4:30 and go home and go bowling. And he loved to do things like, you have to respect that, right?
Right. It's not for everyone, right?
Exactly. And one of my my mentors, my director that gave me my first shot as a director after that person left the organization, he said to me words of wisdom, and I give these words of wisdom to you.
That's great, because that's one of the things we close with every time is word of wisdom. So we're going to use this.
Well, the words of wisdom, he said, just remember, because he said, the technology part, you've got that all figured out. You're one of those technical whizzes. You can fix anything, but always remember, not everybody's a Chris Nowak. Boy, that stuck with me all these careers. And I knew exactly what he meant. I knew exactly what you meant.
Yes, that was a special gift.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
A guy still in my life today.
That's
I still
awesome.
remember that.
That's a great story. So one of the things that being a third-party agency, we work with a lot of technicians. We have a lot of technicians on our team working coast to coast. It's a struggle sometimes to find certificates, Chris, right? When you go to a class, you get your CEUs and you get that shiny certificate. What would you suggest a new biomed start doing from day one?
So I think, you bring up a good point about certificates and that continuing education, regardless if you're certified or not, it's going to help you always in your career. They're the credentials that you're going to present to your employer, whether it's you're going to stay at your current employer or you continue to grow. It's that next step. Maybe there isn't a manager position available at the facility and you're ready to make that next step. Those credentials, those certificates, they're the things that are going to provide you with the value, your self-value. So continue to educate, use things like this podcast, HTM Insider, use so many other resources. There are so many good people that are investing in this career field for you. Take advantage of that.
And I just strongly encourage, just building on that, is keep an electronic file with all of your certificates, but you're still going to get that hard copy certificate or one that you can print. So my suggestion is to you is get that old school photo book, right?
Yeah.
And start keeping them in there and never stop. Make it a habit. Start from day one. Because when an employer like Chris or like Multi-Medical Systems or any other HTM organizations out there, they're going to say, hey, what have you been trained on?
What do you bring to what's
your value, right?
And what can you validate for me?
And that often equates in your pay.
Yeah.
It might be the difference of, $2, $3, $4, $5 an hour. If you can back up what you're actually certified on and what education you're bringing as a value to that company.
Because I'm going to tell you, when I see resumes, and it's great, some folks put all of these capabilities, all of these skill sets that they have. When I see that and I don't see anything to validate that as part of the resume, or you don't even have to make it part of the resume, but during the interview process, maybe you bring something with you to validate that, because you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask questions that are associated with those skill sets that you said you had. And I'll know pretty quickly whether or not that was wonderful scripting that you wrote on the resume or that it actually happened on the resume.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And sometimes on-the-job training is great experience. Document that and when it occurred.
Yeah.
Because if you got on-the-job training and you're certified, to work on this piece of equipment, make sure you document that instead of just saying it out loud.
And hopefully your employer is doing it, right?
Yeah.
So MMS as an employer documents when you provide education to whether it's OJT, because in our organization, we have a competency document. So it talks about all the different skill sets and it's specifically for that individual. We build that competency assessment document for every individual, and that stays in your file all the while that you're employed with our organization.
That's great, Chris. Any other things you could think that might,
Yeah. So
bring value?
Yeah, I do. I do have a few more things. Don't listen to, because there's always going to be folks that want to cut your dream. And if you're working on beds, they poo-poo the bed technology. You know what? Bed technology is extremely important to the safety of the patient, to the patient's whole experience. Guess what they do with bed? Almost all of our beds today have scales integrated into the bed. they medicate that patient based upon the weight of the patient. If you over medicate that patient, you could kill somebody. So the skill set, our teams now work on beds in my organization. It's so important to the safety of the patient. It's not something that should be poo-pooed, if you will, to you, but it is a skill set that's recognized in our organization. We have imaging engineers. We don't call them imaging engineers, but they have those imaging skill sets. Guess what? I've walked in, watched them working on infusion pumps, watched them working on beds, because you know what? There's not a CT broken 24 hours a day or 8 hours a day, right? It doesn't happen every day. So that skill set of imaging is not in use 8 hours a day. So it's important that you broaden your horizons. Don't just pigeonhole yourself into a specific skill set. The broadened skill set, that employee provides much more value to an employer than somebody that's focused on one product line.
Very good. Yeah, that's a great point, Chris. Anything else you can think of today that might really
Cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity.
So
it's a never-ending topic,
yeah,
right?
one thing that we did in our organization, I was able to convince my C-suite leadership. One of the things that was always keeping me up at night is all these connected devices to the network. Your IT teams, they know there's devices connected to the network, but they don't have the visibility. They don't understand the complexities of 510K validation, and that you can't just upgrade an operating system like they do your laptop or your PC on your desk. They can't do that to a medical device. That has to be validated through the OEM, and then you can make the necessary patches. So getting involved in cybersecurity, we bought a tool to allow us to have visibility of everything on our network, every medical device connected to the network. It also finds all of the non-medical devices, but that's our IT department. They're focused on that. We're focused on the medical devices, and I need skill set, right? We want to develop those skill sets on our teams to understand the network connectivity.
Yep. 100%. And, we're really short right now in biomed staffing across the country. Is there anything that you can think of somebody looking at this career field? Should they just attend any school? Should they just do it online? Should they do it in person? What do you recommend?
Wow. So there's so many things available. You talk about online. It depends on the individual and how they learn. Unfortunately, I'm a see it, touch it, feel it kind of person. So I learn best by being in front of something. There's lots of people that can do remote learning in this day and age. They, as gradually they have been adapted to that. So there's lots of schools. There's a school out of San Antonio, those folks, and it's nationwide school that has great education programs. A lot of there's colleges out there that have community colleges that have online programs. So there's so much available to the student. You really need to pick what fits your way that you like to learn and what's most effective.
Yeah, and we had Monty on. We had Monty on, and they're starting a new imaging online. Yep. How amazing is that? That's a continuing making yourself more valuable to your employee. Yeah. I would jump at that opportunity. If I was in your shoes out there, I would jump at that opportunity. I'd be the first one signed up.
Sure. Well, I've even had candidates, they graduate from a program, maybe electronics program or a biomedical program, and they've invested. I talk about investing in yourself. I've talked about it several times today. They've gone to RSTI. I don't know if we're allowed to say names, but they've gone to RSTI and they've taken courses, paid for it themselves, and then come to the employer. Hey, look what I have.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it's been great chatting with you today. Always. Yeah, always good times when we get together. I know Chris is always available for people that want more information. We'll add that on
I've been so
podcast.
Blessed. I love my career. I love giving back.
You can tell by the look on your face.
I love teaching. And I do. I take calls all the time, and whatever I can do for somebody to jump into this career, to make themselves better in this career. I love it.
You hear
I'm
that?
available.
Chris Nowak is available for you. Call him anytime.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go over what is your word of wisdom again. Let's leave our listeners with this because you and I have joked about it. And I have to tell you is one time I had a call with Chris and I said, well, yeah, you could do that, but you don't have a Sherelle.
Yeah.
And he said, let me tell you the story. So I'm so happy you shared that with us
Yeah,
today.
so not everybody's a Chris Nowak. And, I was on the other side of the fence and I was involved with business development and selling biomedical programs. And I sold a very large program into a health system in the Boston, Massachusetts area. And I had a debriefing with the vice president of supply chain. And I asked her, I said, Linda, why me? Why did you choose me and my company? And they said, you know what, Chris, you were in that room and those folks, you said, when you sold this program, you got a piece of me. You got a piece of Chris Nowak. That's what did it for all my people.
There you go.
So
own it. Get out there. Yeah,
yes.
own it. Yes, get out there. Reach out to myself, reach out to Chris, because we're all about helping you guys improve in your careers and make you more valuable to your employers. So thanks again, Chris, for joining us.
This is wonderful. Appreciate it.
Thank you to our listeners and our viewers. Follow us and follow the hashtag. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you can search for a podcast, we're available. So thanks for joining us today.